very public that the Minister and the Department of Education would also have another hand in the final process. So, I thought that a lot of this should have been presented to the public right from the very beginnings of a process that, well, perhaps at the end of the day, it did show how much people care about their community school within the larger school, and I'm hoping that some of the information gathered won't fall on deaf ears, won't be put in cabinets or left on shelves for dust to collect, because I think there is some real guidance for the Minister and the Department about school closure and its decision-making process in the future.
Order, so. Please. The hour of interruption has arrived. The late debate tonight has been submitted by the member for Sackville-Cobequid. Therefore, be resolved that in light of recommendations of HRSB school staff and external consultants retained to undertake the image of our schools consultation process, recognizing the rapid population growth in the Eastern Passage area and the solid community support for high school to provide safe and efficient access to education for their children, this legislature endorses the construction of a high school in the Eastern Passage area. The Honourable the Member for Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You got through it. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at the hour of interruption on this important issue to the residents in my riding, and certainly to Nova Scotians, in my opinion. This issue, Mr. Speaker, is no stranger to these chambers. A friend of mine and a former MLA for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage, Kevin DeVoe, has raised this issue, this same topic in late debate through resolutions, budget debates, petitions. I'm sure you're all aware. And he did this through the direction of his constituents. He brought this issue to them, on their behalf, to this chamber over and over and over again, as will I. Why do I talk about that, what Kevin did? I do it because I want to be very, very clear. I want the record to show that the MLA for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage has on many occasions asked this government to build a high school in Eastern Passage. Recently, a very clear precedent has been set with announcements around requests by other members of this legislature and certainly the community. I've taken the time, Mr. Speaker, to review the documents associated to this issue, and needless to say, there's many. One stands out in particular to me, though, and I spoke briefly with the Honourable Minister earlier today, Minister of Education, about it, and it was in November 2006, an email from Kevin to our high school committee, our local high school committee, a committee of dedicated residents who have been working to advocate for this cause for many years. Kevin wrote to us about a very positive meeting that he had had with the Honourable Minister of Education, and she is currently still the Minister. And the gist of it is, in a very short portion of it, is the Minister made a verbal commitment to me to present to Cabinet a proposal that includes a high school in the Eastern Passage Woodside area as part of a larger sum of money to address capacity issues in the Greater Dartmouth. This is good news, he said. For the first time, I'm optimistic. I spoke briefly of this. It didn't seem as, with the Minister earlier, it didn't seem as a shock to her. And again, in light of this, naturally the resolution that's before us tonight is why I'm here. The recent recommendations by the Halifax Regional School Board to defer the decision on recommending a high school for Eastern Passage area. This is a tremendous blow, Mr. Speaker, to the residents of the Eastern Passage, Cow Bay, Shearwater, and including the Woodside area. How could it not be? The community has been advocating for this for so many years. Just to give a brief history, I won't spend too much time there, but it's been almost 30 years, Mr. Speaker, busing the community children out of the students of our community out of Eastern Passage. In the 70s, they all went to Graham Creighton. At that time, the community was smaller. It made sense. In the 80s, Cole Harbour High School was built along with Gordon Bell. At that time, it continued to make sense. By the 1990s, the community had grown. And at that time, the Liberals were the governing body of the day. Knowing that Eastern Passage needed a high school, they still built Auburn Drive. I don't regret that, other than because those students obviously have been blessed to have it, those families. And I don't think that needs to change. One community doesn't have to lose in order for another to gain. Eastern Passage students going to Cole Harbour High, they're leaving their community to go to a community that most of those children don't go to that school. They all go to the new one. Since the 1980s, 200 students to more than 650, Mr. Speaker. This is growth in the community. Eastern Passage is the largest community in Nova Scotia with almost 13,000 residents without a high school. Still growing. Mr. Speaker, this community is still growing. And Halifax Regional Municipality, in its 25-year regional plan, has designated the Eastern Passage area as a growth area. This means that they will be investing in that area and supporting growth. It's not going to stop. We are one of the few exceptions where the communities are growing. Our families are growing. The number of children is growing. What does it tell us? It tells us there are more students. Now, unfortunately, it became very clear as a young mother raising my children in a community where my kids were attending the schools, and it was really, I think, confirmed when I became a counselor. The discussions around the table, and it's kind of a joke and it's a sad one, is that the school boards and the minister at the Department of Education need to see the whites of their eyes before they build a school. That's what's being said. That's what's been said. And I guess I have to ask, how many more eyes do they have to see to build a school in the Eastern Passage area? I'll bring it back to recent events. And I want to again make note of the discussion between Kevin and the Minister of Education with the glimmer of hope. Even though they had hope a number of years ago, they knew that the fight was not over. So they continued. The community stayed committed. They did their homework. They made presentations to the boards and the groups that needed the Department of Education. And since as early as 2000, the year 2000, Halifax Regional School Board has been considering a high school for the Eastern Passage area. They've done the in-depth reviews, Mr. Speaker. And most recently, last year again, on their capital build list, that was presented to the minister, Eastern Passage Woodside Area High School was on the list. Then, as a directive from the Minister of Education and that department, a more in-depth review was required. Thus, the Imagine Our Schools process. Again, Mr. Speaker, the same conclusion. And after the public consultation, again, Halifax Regional School Board staff, the same recommendation. We all know what came next, Mr. Speaker. The current one-man, one-person school board is deferring this decision because he's not enough evidence. I can tell you that I attended every single one of those meetings with barring one. One I could not, I was not in town. Community members took part in those meetings. We had community residents take part in actually being part of the 70-person committee. The Department of Education wanted public input. They heard loud and clear from the families that those families in the Halifax region, both sides of the harbour, wanted to educate their children in their own communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Windsor responded positively to so many of those communities and made a commitment they would not lose their schools in their neighbourhoods. Why is it that they're treating Eastern Passage, Shearwater, Woodside any differently? So many questions are coming forward to me, Mr. Speaker. Why isn't our government, who clearly ran a Tory candidate in the recent by-election, who supported a high school, why are they not righting this wrong? In the year of celebrating democracy, 250 years, what message can they possibly think they're sending to the constituents of my riding? The message is loud and clear. They just don't matter enough to this government. The minister will speak of process, and I understand that process very clear, as do my constituents. This government, the Department of Education, makes the final decision. We accept that. So frankly, we're still holding out hope. The door is wide open for the minister to come forward and do what is right. Earlier in this chamber, the Honourable Minister of Health, in question period, bragged about this government being a government of consultation. And also, I reflected earlier on our prayer that we all say every day in this House, speaks of justice and equity for those we serve. Why is the consultation from the Halifax Regional School Board and Imagine Our Schools process suddenly not valid? Where is the justice and equity in that, Mr. Speaker? Recent discussions with the minister earlier today suggested that a final decision is not made, and in this process, review of recommendations will, in her department, they'll make a decision. So I have a glimmer of hope. I look forward to the minister's comments today. I look forward to sharing her remarks with the constituents of Cole Harbour and Eastern Passage. And I will work with the minister to achieve the goals of these communities. And finally, look forward to an announcement, the support of a high school in Eastern Passage that has become, this government has become famous for, announcements in communities. I just want them to tell me the commitment's been there, Mr. Speaker. The minister, the community, the MLAs requested it, Halifax Regional School Board's recommendations, consultants' recommendations. What more do they need? Thank you.
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank the honourable member for bringing this resolution forward. And as the member has noted, she and I have discussed this as recently as today, and I want to thank her for her passion that she has and that she has demonstrated for her constituents and for the students in that area. I have made the statement here in the House that all students in the province of Nova Scotia are important to me, and the students in her area are no exception to that. This government is proud of its record of building new schools, and since 2000 we have built 21 new schools, though certainly that information has been shared here in the House, and that's an investment of over $400 million over 8 years to work through our 2003 capital construction list. The member opposite spoke to the process, and there is a clearly defined process that we do follow. The investment that we're making in our new schools is part of a fiscally responsible long-term plan, Mr. Speaker. And in that process, we continue to work with school boards to identify and set priorities for their school capital construction needs. In 2005, a bit of history that I'm sure the member opposite is well aware of. In 2005, the Halifax Regional School Board of the day submitted a request for a new high school in Eastern Passage to the School Capital Construction Committee. That committee includes members from various government departments, including education, finance, transportation, as well as the Nova Scotia School Boards Association. And they receive all requests that come from school boards as part of that process, what school boards have identified as their priorities. So they come into this committee for review. And at the time, as the member opposite did suggest, the committee wanted more information from the board. They wanted the board to have a look at all of the needs in the eastern region of Halifax HRM. And so they went back to the board and said that they were turning down the request for a new high school in Eastern Passage pending more information on a comprehensive plan. In its reasons for the decision, the committee said there was a need for some system rationalization in the Dartmouth area. And again, I mentioned earlier in question period, or in estimates today, the whole business of capacity, excess capacity, and never having the population where we had the space. And the work that was done in the schools in that area and that eastern area identified some of those issues and concerns. There are currently 4 high schools in the area. Auburn Drive and Cole Harbor are situated, as we know, very close to one another. And one of the things that the board was asked to do as part of their comprehensive plan was to look at what impact a new high school would have on those schools. Approximately 500 to 600 students in the Eastern Passage area coming out of Cole Harbor and leaving a school that would be well below its capacity and which would compound that whole issue of excess space and building new to accommodate the same population. So it was based on that the Capital Construction Committee asked the board to go back and take a closer look. The committee wanted to make sure that the board had a good picture of what they had, what they needed, and what the impact would be on any movement of students for whatever reason. The discussions that followed between the school board and the department led to the Imagine Our Schools, and we've spoken a bit about that already in estimates. But that process, again, is one that the department asks all boards to go through. Halifax board made the decision to go with an outside consultant, and we have heard comments here today about the merits of that or the flaws in that process. That was their decision. That was not the department's decision. In that process, they did have, as the member opposite has mentioned, a number of opportunities for consultation and public meeting. And that Imagine Our Schools process was completed, and the consultant did recommend a new high school for Eastern Passage. The school board, in their receiving that report, did not recommend that at this time. And I know from the member opposite that members in that community have heard that one too many times. And I understand their disappointment in that. I had the opportunity in 2006, Mr. Speaker, to meet with a group of parents from the Eastern Passage area, and their presentation to me was very passionate and it was very eloquent. A school, whether existing or proposed, is important to that community. And these parents want only the best for their children, and we cannot fault them for that. There are about 600 students, and again, these are rough numbers, in the Eastern Passage, Woodside, Shearwater areas that go to Cole Harbor High. And parents are concerned about the distance those students travel each day and the negative impact that that transportation can have on their academic, social, and athletic lives. We had a good meeting. They understood my position, I understood theirs. There's also been reference to a meeting with the former MLA from the area. Again, another good meeting. And it is, as I said, a blow to the community to hear that the board is wanting more information. And what I can say in closing is that we assess all requests from the boards carefully to make sure that our tax dollars are being well spent. And we also give boards some autonomy in that they present their priorities to us. We do stand back and allow that process to work. However, the final decision is made by the Capital Construction Committee, which brings me a recommendation, and I, as minister, take on to Cabinet. And I would ask that the member opposite be patient one more time and recognize that I want the best for the students in Eastern Passage. Thank you.
The Honourable, the member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased this evening to join in late debate on a very worthy topic put forth by the member from Eastern Passage. I had the opportunity during the by-election to help a little bit with our candidate, Kelly Rombo, in Eastern Passage, and to go door to door and to hear from people on a number of issues. The school issue was one of those which came through pretty loud and clear. I just spoke during estimates about Imagine Our Schools, and I'm not just picking and choosing from the O'Shaughnessy report, but I was not surprised that her and her committee had decided that Eastern Passage justly and rightly deserved her own community school. I was perhaps more surprised when Howard Windsor didn't give a strong endorsement to the need for that area to have a school. In June 2006, HRSB approved a proposal recommending a new high school be built for the Eastern Central area. This was a part of the HRSB school capital construction priority at that time. So we know there's a history, and the member for Eastern Passage talked about going back years earlier, in fact, when there was a growing need, a growing desire as the area's population started to grow. But I would not be one to use population only as a determination for having a school in Eastern Passage. I am a very, very strong proponent of community schools, and community schools of moderate size. High schools, 500 to 700 students are around a maximum area that I think can, in fact, create the school climate for the best education. And in fact, there is lots of research to show that. In fact, a number of researchers have pointed out that there are lots of initiatives, for example, around testing to improve school scores and better results in schools. However, there is very good research showing that community schools are very, very successful. There is a strong and coherent approach to schooling when the adult's in charge of a lot of authority to make important decisions, and all of this can happen inside the public sector without charters, vouchers, or privatization. So in taking a look at building a community school where there are greater inputs from the local population, from parents and those who want to support and engage in a community school, and in fact, if we take a look at Auburn and Cole Harbour High, which are very, very large schools, and I think having Eastern Shore students return to their community and be a greater part of living and learning in their environment, in which many would be close to a high school, I think would be an advantage for all three schools, because schools have been too often looked at as unidimensional, one dimension. and in fact, a large school like Cold Harbor or Auburn that perhaps had a reduction in school population could in fact enhance the community with other uses. And this was probably one of the most revealing parts of the Imagine Our Schools process, when in fact Howard Windsor took on a consultation around recommendations and results. And we heard the most powerful arguments from many, many sources about the vitality of community schools and what they mean for their areas. So one of the statistics that I came across in looking at a little background for today was that in 2006, a committee established in Eastern Passage presented a petition of over 3,000 signatures from those for those in favor of the construction of a new school in Eastern Passage by 2011. And you know, we still have time, you know, during the next few years to make the right decision for Eastern Passage. And I think it's one that all parties, you know, good education and community schools are not really a partisan issue. They should be all about meeting the needs of a growing community. And in that regard, more than 700 new homes have been approved for construction in the area starting in 2006 and over the next 3 or 4 years, and that the population will jump from 13,000 to 15,000 in just this year. So there is a lot of good evidence-based information to make a good decision here for Eastern Passage. One of the other pieces of information that I came across that I really liked was from it was again another research article by Deborah Meyer, and she said, "What sets the successful schools apart? They create such communities for all children. It's not even their particular approach to curriculum and pedagogy that make them work. It's that the schools are organized to maximize the power of the adults who know the kids best, the strength of their ties with their kids and families, and their ability to put together a coherent school-wide curriculum. They are built around a unique culture, one that wraps kids and adults together in a shared system of values." And I think developing community schools do allow for the unique characteristics of a region, of an area, of a town to come together. So there's a great case for community schools, and I'm hoping that over the next while there will be a reconsideration and an endorsement of a school for Eastern Passage. It's interesting that in British Columbia, again, it's one that we can probably identify with a little bit more. But you know, the word on community schools are that they are safer, they have lower dropout rates, provide collegial working environment for teachers, as well as increased public confidence and parent satisfaction. Now, those elements were strongly stated in just recent weeks about how important community schools were during the Imagine Our Schools process. So I believe the minister is listening to the request and to the reflection that has been made about a school for Eastern Passage. So it was to everybody dismay on April 23rd when the one-man board Howard Windsor deferred a decision on whether or not to build a new school in Eastern Passage to an unspecified date. Well, just a few months away, school board elections are coming up. Know what at least the candidate in those areas stand for in terms of a school for Eastern Passage and in terms of building strong community schools here in our province. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will take my place.
Thank you. We will take a short recess until the subcommittee will start their work.
Order, please. I will call the Committee on Supply back to order. Chair will recognize the honourable member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When we broke at the point of interruption in proceedings, had made a comment on the Imagine Our Schools process, and I would like to hear from the minister. I know who at this point only had to look a little bit from a distance, perhaps a little bit objectively at the process, and I'm wondering what her and the department, at least on a very, very quick look and view, how they gauged this process, and the place that an external body coming in has a look at making recommendations for the future.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I listened with interest as the member opposite talked about the process. And I do want to repeat that it is a request of the department that boards go through a process where they look at the needs within their particular communities, and they are able to identify what those facilities needs are. And boards attack that in different ways. They may use some of their own staff. They may look at some local expertise, or in this case, the decision was made to go outside. I will repeat that that is a decision of the board, and it is a cost to the board. There's always some advantage, I guess, to having an outside perspective. There is also, however, great value in having someone who understands the communities, who understands the province, and who can look as objectively as possible at the schools that are being reviewed and the demographics that are being considered. We recognize that the process is required to allow opportunity for community input, for consultation, and all of the information that's obtained through that does come in to the board for recommendation. But that is only one part of the process. And I think the fact that we want to make sure that we fully understand the impact of those decisions and the communities that will be affected, that the next level of scrutiny, I guess, is where we have our own school capital construction committee, and we have our own department staff who can take the recommendation and answer those questions: what impact does this have? So to agree with the member opposite, there's certainly some value in having the expertise, using the expertise that we have. We certainly have it in our province. That was not the decision here, but it is only one part of the process.
Thank you. The honourable member from Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In many ways, of course, the Imagine Our Schools document, staff reaction, as well as school board, reaction, probably will undertake maybe some new directions with a new school board, even before the ministry and the department have to react to it. So I just wanted to at least make a comment about the process, hear the minister's how she viewed that process in relation to how her and her department would view that for another day. So I appreciate that comment. I want to go back to class size because in the government's Learning for Life initiative, the outline, and it was a strong commitment, it was a priority of government to really work on class sizes. And I know the department was caught a little bit this year by the fact that the primary entry date changed from September 31st to December 31st, and it's obviously an initiative that we put forward on several occasions, and I was glad that the minister and the department felt that it was time for Nova Scotia to move that forward. And I know the change does bring some challenges, some new economic realities into play. But I'd like to hear from the minister, about how deep her commitment and government's commitment is to class size reduction. It is still one of the elements that's always in play, I think, to delivering the strongest programs in our schools. And in fact, very often I hear the comment that we have every bit as good a teacher, as highly qualified a teacher in public education as there is in private school. But in private school, you're going to find very few classes that'll be over 15. And so class size really does make a difference. And I want to hear from the minister on her commitment, her government's commitment to a process that will move beyond this year, perhaps, because we all know that planning for any class size reduction, as we have found this year, impacts and takes time to initiate. So, so if you could respond to that, please, Madam Minister.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the member opposite. I believe that as a former educator, he will understand the significant impact that a change of class size or the intake of students, the impact that that does have on facilities, on administration, and on staffing. And I believe he understands that impact well. And so can perhaps appreciate the combination of the change of entry date, which we believe will translate into about 80 new positions across the province. will translate into additional spaces required for those extra students. And then to add on top of that, a change with the capping at grade 4 to a cap of 25. However, that's not to say that there's not some merit to a small class size, and most importantly, perhaps, a commitment by this government to cap class sizes at 25 to the end of grade 4. And when we considered the impact that the early entry date would have on facilities and staffing and administration, and trying to keep the commitment to cap class sizes so we wouldn't have classes that were going 30 and above, we made the decision that we would honor the commitment to cap, and we would keep the cap at 28 for grade 4. I've said here earlier, and I will say again, that it is our intention to monitor that cap size at grade 4 at 28, and to look at the impact that that has on those other concerns about the facilities, the administration, and the ability to accommodate extra teachers and extra students in the schools. The commitment to do the capping primary to grade 4 was part of Learning for Life 2. And also the platform commitment was to extend the cap to grades 5 and 6. So it is the plan of this government to honor the commitments to cap to the end of grade 6. And we will move through that as resources are available and as schools are able to accommodate that change. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are implementing in this budget, or proposing in this budget, that we will cap at 28 for grade 4s in this province.
Thank you. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Madam Minister, and Mr. Speaker, through you. I know that's a change in plan. I hope as you review and monitor this, you will take a second look in time. We, in fact, had proposed, picking up 1 month of children for each of 3 years. That may have been, possibly a better way to go. But the decision now is made, and we work with it and move through that process. In relation to class size, one of the areas that we're hearing a lot about from teachers' unions, this has been brought out now in Quebec and Ontario in just recent months, the real need now for smaller class size is the number of high needs children that are in our class. And in fact, in British Columbia, there's now a law which says that if you have 30 students in your class, that you can, in order to have any more than 3 high need students, a teacher must give permission. But what it's really talking about and clearly demonstrating is that the impact on a high-quality learning environment is definitely impacted and impinged upon by these children. Not that they shouldn't be there, but their needs, in fact, do require additional resources. And one of the ways of dealing with that challenge is that they're continuing to try and move down class sizes. And everybody is thinking that it is now both should be directed by departments of education to accomplish, as well as at a time of less students entering school, and this has been going on for quite a number of years. But this is where we probably get to real investment in education, which some of the critics around P to 12 allotment for education this year are saying it makes it very difficult to accomplish some of those desirable educational goals. So I'm wondering, when we take a look at class sizes in HRM, for example, 2004-5, which are generally the latest ones that we can get from the documents, there were 262 junior high classrooms with 26 to 30, 67 classes with 31 to 35. Now we know that junior high is being identified as the years with considerable dropout, years in which many behavioral problems are identified, and it was an area that Judge Merlin Nunn was very concerned about in the Nunn report, that we had to do more at the junior high level. So once again, I'm asking the minister about a long-term picture. What are some possible ways of dealing with these kinds of numbers, and a plan to reduce class size? And I would promote, and our party would promote, at the junior high level, especially in light of the Nunn report.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, to my colleague, raises an excellent point about the composition of the class, and as an educator would well understand that the composition of a class is probably as challenging at times as the number of students in the class. And as a teacher, you sometimes had those classes that you wanted to keep forever because the composition was such that it was a very positive experience. However, when we did the capping of the class size, we took that into consideration. And for example, when you have combined classes, a primary 1 or a 1-2 or a 2-3, we recognized that that was an additional challenge for the teacher and for the students in getting access to their teacher, so to speak. So those classes are capped at 20. So with the full implementation of this initiative, there should be no class sizes up to the end of grade 3 that are beyond 25, and there should be no combined classes up to the end of grade 3 that are more than 20. That's the intent of the initiative. The question about how far we go with this, we know that this government has made a commitment to cap to the end of grade 6. We are working towards that. And we've also had discussion on the floor of this House about capping or looking at class sizes at junior high. So what we would like to do is to work up the grades, look at how effective it is, and make sure that what we have in place is working, review that, monitor that, and if the outcome of that is positive, look at extending that beyond grade 6. But our commitment right now is to get to the end of grade 6.
Thank you. The honourable member from Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Madam Minister. And an area that would have changed the direction this year, our party will certainly be taking a close look at, and we'll bring it back to the floor of the legislature if we need to in the months ahead. To switch here now and take a look at French immersion and decor immersion. As we know, the goal in Nova Scotia was to double the percentage of students who were bilingual in Nova Scotia from 24% to 50% by 2013. There are more students taking immersion, but less taking the core French. Potential problems are that French is not mandatory, of course, in Nova Scotia. There's a lack of qualified teachers necessary to meet French immersion, and core immersion objectives. School boards can determine departmental goals by not funding specific programs or by not being able to fund classes after federal funding has ceased for their specific classes. 4 of 5 pilot projects providing core French only are currently underway in Cape Breton. The purpose of the program is to prepare students for core French, a strict French-only program. Before I get to 3 or 4 specific questions here, I would like to hear the Minister comment on a tremendous shift in direction that our neighbor province, New Brunswick, has gone. And I'm wondering if the Minister is reviewing a decision like that, or is the Minister and the Department very clear in the direction that French education is taking in this province?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, I certainly have been watching with interest what is happening with our friends in New Brunswick. And it's caused me to look at what we're currently doing in our province and the response and the support that we have for the programs that we currently have in place. And for the benefit of the House here, it is early and late immersion is the way we introduce French. Also have the core French, which is a requirement, grades 4 to 9. And then, of course, at the high school level, the French can be one of the language electives that students need to graduate. But it's interesting when you track the enrollment in French immersion in our province, and early immersion is showing a significant increase in the numbers. We currently, in both early and late immersion, have over close to 15,000 students who are taking French immersion. And that translates into about 10% of our student population. So I think the message I'm getting from that and from those statistics are that the delivery model that we have now is meeting the needs and is encouraging and inviting students to participate and to enroll in French immersion. That number of students translates into over 500 immersion classes across the province and about 600 plus teachers delivering that. So it does represent a significant part of our student population, 10%, and it is, the numbers are growing. So we will continue to monitor what's happening. I meet regularly with the Parents for French, and I know that they will give me their thoughts on that, and we will listen. But at this point, we will continue with our early and late as we currently have it.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, because I'm very pleased to hear that. A recent I guess, involvement that I had was just a couple of years ago in AVRSB when they were looking at dropping French in 5 elementary schools. And of course, we saw the outcry from parents there. But one of the questions that I'm asked and really can't answer is what classifies as functionally bilingual in Nova Scotia? I mean, I really find that perhaps a somewhat challenging question. And I'm wondering if the Department of Education has determined when a student leaves grade 12, you know, what level of French are they able to engage in that would consider them as functionally bilingual, because we are still working towards that very laudable goal. If we had 50% of our students, would be a tremendous achievement. And I think we need to continue to reach for that. We all again, know some of the research around early, in fact, second language learning and having a second language through our school years. But what is it that really constitutes a functional bilingual student?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And at this point in time, when a student completes the immersion program, they get a certificate of completion. But we do not, at this point, have an exit exam. And we recognize that with the mobility that exists and the benefit a second language can have to our students as they go into university or into the workforce or as they travel, it's certainly something that I believe should be part of our assessment program. And we would have to look at the standard for that linguistic ability and measure against that. But, you know, we may be looking at a completion certificate and a proficiency certificate. It may not be, all students may not be expected to achieve the same level, but there needs to be some designation, I believe, as to the level of proficiency that they do have. So we'll certainly take that under advisement. It's something that our department has looked at, but I think it's becoming ever more an issue so that our students can move into another environment with that standard of linguistic ability.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Kings West.
In that regard, in order to achieve that very high goal, maybe a little lofty, but at the same time, I commend the department for working for that level of percentage of bilingual students in the province. I'm wondering, however, you know, what are some of the statistical picture of students moving from elementary, junior high, and on to senior high? Perhaps we need to be doing a lot more around not just offering the course, but actually marketing, promoting, showing the value of having the French either through immersion or core French as they continue to move through the grades and taking courses as long as possible through the high school years. Sometimes we offer the course, but maybe we don't do enough around letting students know how advantageous it is, and even you know, socially, to have that second language, because we do have a different view, perhaps, of languages than our Europeans, our European cousins, I was going to say, because learning 3 or 4 or 5 languages seems to be very common, very ordinary for them. So I'm a strong proponent of having French through the grades in our public education system, but are we doing enough on the promotion side?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, you know, our statistics do show that we have 15,000 students who are involved in immersion, but our statistics also show that we lose students at the end of grade 9. And they're going into high school and they have a number of options, a number of courses from which they can choose. French is one of the language courses they can take, but it's not a requirement at high school to graduate to have a high school French program. And you know, one of the things that I think the balance here is, do we make it compulsory, or do we try to have students value that second language and take it for that reason rather than make it compulsory? We've not taken a stand on that, but we recognize that we do need to encourage. We would prefer, I believe, to encourage rather than mandate, because if you want them to enjoy and value it, it comes easier if it's their decision, not someone else's. However, we've watched those statistics, and we need to do something to encourage more students to continue that French as a second language in high schools. And so this discussion is certainly important and will help our staff as they continue to review that and determine what is the best way. We know that Canadian Parents for French are very concerned as well about the number of students that don't continue after grade 9. And so we'll be glad to work with them to see if there's a strategy, whether it's communication, whether it's showing the value of the second language. Hopefully not to the mandatory, but that's always an option.
Thank you. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That was a question I was going to ask about the possibility, the place for a mandatory course. So have my answer there. But what about in terms of expanding the pilot projects around core French? Is there any provision inside the budget this year, or where is the long-range plan for those programs heading?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
But do we have any plans to expand that? Mr. Speaker, to the member, we have 3 boards that are currently offering the intensive French, and we certainly encourage them to expand that, and it has to be when they have the population that's ready to respond to that. And extended core is offered in 4 boards, and so we have pockets in the province where that's happening, and what we're looking at is giving boards the ability to expand on that and to implement it as they are ready and as the needs in their communities are ready.
Thank you. The Honourable the member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And to change direction here, in one of the bills that was brought forward in the House since we returned was the bill that would permit part of the Department of Education to join Labour in the new Department of Labour and Workforce Development. There's a lot of talk around, yes, community college, but use of that old term, vocational training. It doesn't seem to want to go away. Perhaps it's had a lot more value than we realized at the time when we started to depart from that. So I know the Premier during, at least during the time he was campaigning for leadership, had talked about looking at expanding vocational schools. We know that O2 has come in, the Options and Opportunities program, which again is getting very, very excellent reviews. However, the budget seems to put some limitations on whether or not that program is going to be able to move along in its planned introduction, both through the grades and also in the number of schools that will be offering O2. So 2 questions there, I guess, Madam Minister, in terms of the concept that we have at Memorial, where we have an integrated high school, vocational school, and also are we not backing off on O2, but our budget limitations not permitting the advance of O2 in the desire that the school boards seem to want to implement?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, to the member, I'm pleased to hear your comments with respect to O2, because it certainly is a program that we believe meets a need, and it was a need that a void, I guess, that was created when vocational schools were closed in this province. and it provides an opportunity for those students who are more interested in the trades or who are interested in a combination of academics and trades. And so by going through the O2 program, they can get some taste of some of the trades, and they still graduate with their high school graduation certificate. Many of them get an opportunity to decide, yes, this is an area I'd like to pursue, or they find out that it's absolutely one they do not. And if that's the decision that they make based on the information they have, then we believe that we've helped them go down the right path. So the O2 program does capture that audience. And again, it also, with successful completion, guarantees them a seat at the community college if in fact that's the way they want to go. So we're very happy with the way that's unfolded, and expanding it again this year. We have in our budget to expand the O2, and that would provide more opportunities for more students. The program you speak of specifically, skills training, which is probably closer to the old vocational school than perhaps the O2, because the O2 is a parallel program. But we have in our budget this year dollars to begin that skills trade programming. We've gone out to boards to let them know that we have the curriculum developed and we're ready to go with that. And they're looking at schools where that might be implemented. They come back to us and say, yes, we're interested, and we believe we've met the criteria and we want to go ahead with that. We have enough dollars in our budget for 08-09 to start up at least one of those in each board, but that again will depend on the request from the board to participate in that. But that again, I said, is more closely aligned with the old vocational kind of training. There's definitely a need out there. We know that we have a shortage of skilled laborers in this province, and we know that that's a result of a couple of things: declining enrollments, fewer students graduating, retirements of those people who have provided that service over a number of years, and unfortunately some who want to move away. So there's a great need out there, there's a great demand. It's something that we encourage our students to at least explore and determine if they want to follow that path, and if they do, there's employment here in Nova Scotia for them.
Thank you. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's a topic that I do need to follow up a little bit more, because I'm not sure this year. I've only heard from a couple of school boards about not having the dollars in the budget to expand O2 to the degree that they would like, and one of those boards, HRSB, where I met with the board chair or the whole school board, I guess, and the superintendent last week. If we take a look at the fact in Nova Scotia that we have about 42% of our graduating students that go on to post-secondary, and only about 16-17% go to community college of the 42% who pursue post-secondary, we know that's an area that we have to do something about. We have to take greater control of our destiny with providing a more significant number of young Nova Scotians with at least an orientation towards trades when they leave school. And in fact, we all know how, in fact, cultivating an interest in a particular vocational trade or a skill, that it was really the way in which many went on to learn and to enroll in vocational programs. So I'm afraid we have lost some of that connection. Probably returning to the days when, you know, at the grade 10 level, you could go and spend a day a week at the vocational school. Perhaps that day is gone, but we need now to find some ways to connect stronger with the industrial world, the light industry, and perhaps even the heavy industry where it's appropriate. I think we have to create that orientation for our high school students. We'll always have a percentage that will not want or ever inclined to go to university, but we now know that the labor market is saying to us that 80 to 90% of all jobs in the future will require post-secondary at community college or at university. So it's a piece that I feel the province needs to do more with, have a more aggressive plan. And I would like for the minister to comment on that and to say what the plan is to get O2 in as many of our schools as possible, since I don't think we're going to return to the integrated concept like Memorial.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I spoke positively and favorably about the O2 program, and any reviews that we're getting from around the province support that. Parents understand that it's a great opportunity for their students, and the students themselves appreciate the exposure. One of the things we've been careful to do is to make sure that students do have a balance as they move up through, so that they still graduate with their grade 12 high school certificate. And we think that's important because we don't want them to find out in 2 or 3 years' time that they want to do something that requires that, and there's not very much you can do in this province, not many jobs you can make application for where they aren't asking you for your grade 12 graduation certificate. So we've balanced the academic with the hands-on in the O2 program. We have a goal to have that program available to all high school students in the province. This past year, we had that program in 34 schools. Our budget for next year is proposing adding 10 new schools to that, a $2.25 million investment, which would add 21 teachers and put that program in 44 of our high schools. So our goal is to get it in all high schools. We're taking it gradually. We're learning as we move through it, but that is our goal. With respect to the trades, and again, the Skills and Training Division of my department, which works very closely with the labor market, tries to respond to the demands that are out there. And a number of our apprenticeship programs are designed to do that, where students, even in high school, can get some credit towards an apprenticeship program as they go through the academics and get their grade 12 certificate. So we recognize that students need as much information as possible before they make a decision about their future at the end of grade 12. And we start in grade 9 with information about careers, and again, help them make an informed decision at the end of grade 12 and give them that exposure and that information that will lead them to a post-secondary. As has been mentioned, post-secondary is very much a requirement in this generation, and we're hoping that we can prepare students to take a path in post-secondary that's a seamless transition for them.
Thank you. The Honourable, the member for Kingswith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the observations that has been made is that some of our schools started to move from the harder, more tactile courses to filling those rooms with computers. And we all know the relationship and the interrelationship of computers with design and the part that they play now in many of the skills. I'm wondering, as we design the next generation of schools in Nova Scotia, are we going to maintain those types of classrooms where, in fact, students can use wood, use metal, be able to deal with some of those basic, carpentry and mechanical types of skills that we still very, very much need. In fact, perhaps even a greater need for, as many of those trades now, are much more demanding than perhaps what they were in the past, and some complexities there. So I think that early orientation through junior and senior high is still very much needed, but we have to have the design of our schools that will accommodate that. And I'm wondering if the minister could comment on will that still play a significant place as we design new schools?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's true that the design of schools reflects the program that's being offered, the curriculum that's being offered. And we have seen changes from the old shops to the computer labs, and from the home economics to the family studies, and a number of those changes. And as the curriculum changes and programs change, so does the design of buildings. So I'm hoping that as our curriculum reflects more of the skills kind of training, that we either are able to accommodate that in the design of the building, or in a mobile lab, for example, that is fully equipped and can provide that learning environment on site for the students. But the point is that new construction certainly does reflect programs that are being delivered.
Thank you. The honourable member's time will expire at 7:21. The honourable member from Kings West.
7:21?
That's correct.
Okay, I guess I'm just going to end off tonight, and haven't gotten into post-secondary yet, but post-secondary kind of connects with teacher education. And I won't talk about the memorial conundrum in terms of attracting so many Nova Scotia students. I'll leave that for tomorrow. But Memorial seems to want to have a presence in Nova Scotia to educate our students, our teacher training, and they have offered a program at CBU, and we know that within a year that program will terminate. However, Memorial is making a strong initiative after not being permitted to move forward with their desired plan for Dalhousie, but now looking at perhaps even a standalone program here in the province. I want the minister to tell Nova Scotians and perhaps future teacher candidates for that program, is that possible within the current legislation of Nova Scotia and the teacher training requirements? And secondly, is it also required by the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Council to give approval for such program?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sure there will be more questions tomorrow with respect to the teacher ed review, report, recommendations, and response. However, I do want to say that all of the all of the decisions that were made with respect to teacher training in this province were based on maintaining a high standard, a high quality of program. And our Nova Scotia students and any students who are studying here deserve the best program that we can possibly offer. And so when we looked at where that's delivered and how it's delivered and what we expect of the institution that is doing the delivery, we were guided by that first and foremost. That's where your MPHEC approval comes in. That's where we have set some conditions that the program must meet the needs of our labor market demand. We do want to have enough control over the training of teachers in our province that we have high quality teachers coming through an excellent program who will be excellent teachers in our classroom, and they will have training in the teachables will be in the disciplines that we desire and that we need. So we have prefaced all of our decisions on that. The second thing that we considered when we were looking at what our response would be is to make sure that we have 11 universities and colleges here in the province, and they have an excellent reputation. And if there are seats to be funded by this government to make sure that we have the number of teachers we need, it's important that those be funded and filled in our Nova Scotia universities. We know that universities can form articulation agreements with other universities, but we wanted to make sure that our universities had an opportunity to deliver that program first and foremost. And so the partnerships that existed or were proposed were ones that we felt might limit our own universities from having that opportunity. So we made the decisions, we made the recommendations. We believe it will strengthen the delivery program that we have, and it will provide opportunities for Nova Scotia students who wish to become teachers to get that training in Nova Scotia, and hopefully they will stay here to teach after they receive their training. But Nova Scotia students in Nova Scotia universities is a priority.
Thank you. The honourable member from Kingswest's time has expired. There's approximately 3 minutes left in debate. The chair now recognizes the honourable member from Waverley Fall River Beaver Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been quite an afternoon, and I want to take this opportunity in the closing minutes of the day to leave the minister and certainly the staff that are here with some catchphrases that I think were some common themes that we expressed throughout the day. And I know that one of the things that I wanted to emphasize was that one size does not necessarily fit all. That I threw around the word accommodations, and I hope that we recognize the individual needs of the students, not forget the needs of the teachers in the classroom, and at the same time recognize that the individual needs of libraries and school boards are also at essence here as well. I would also like to express that one of the things I talked about briefly was some funding concerns that I wanted to express around the boards themselves. And also with respect to libraries and that formulas are not always fair when you break them down. I would also like to express my thanks because we got quite a lineup tomorrow of my colleagues that are going to speak, and I don't know if I'm going to get the chance again, even though I may be playing the lead role here. But I want to thank the staff, and I certainly want to thank the minister, and particular, Madam Minister, I know that this is a very difficult time for you. I want you to know that the entire NDP caucus recognizes that, and I want to relay onto you, certainly on behalf of everyone that's on this side of the House, that our deep appreciation and our thoughts are with you. So.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Order, please. The time allotted for debate in Committee on Supply has now expired. The Honourable the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that you rise and the committee report progress or business.
Thank you.
Carried. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call private members' bills for second reading, Bill number 81?
Private members' bills for second reading. Bill number 81.
Bill number 81, the Domestic Violence Elimination Act.
The Honourable, the member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise today to introduce Bill number 81, the Domestic Violence Elimination Act, for second reading. This is a bill that I first introduced in the spring of '06, and I am very pleased to see that it is here for second reading this evening. Our Liberal caucus has been very supportive of this bill, and our leader in particular has often spoken of the connection between domestic violence, poverty, crime, homelessness, and the cycles of violence. And I thank him as well for his support in moving this one to the floor tonight. I think it's very important that this bill be moved and that we begin to speak about domestic violence in the legislature. It's a subject that comes up rarely. In my 5 years almost here in the House, we generally only mention it around December 6th when we think of the events of that day in 1989. And we don't talk about it, although we're hearing of it and reading about it every day. And people in our province are working every day on the front lines, dealing with the impacts of domestic violence and trying to help people recover and move on with their lives after the incidents of domestic violence. So it's very prevalent in our province, is something that we should all take note of, and that calls for some dramatic action on behalf of the government and on behalf of us as legislators. What we need to do is look for strategies, programs, and approaches that will work to reduce or even prevent domestic violence and abuse in our province. By moving second reading, this demonstrates a change in the government's recognition of the importance of this issue, and I do appreciate that. Some of the figures that come up and that I think are important to remember at this point in time, Mr. Speaker, are just, again, I mentioned the prevalence of domestic violence, but I think it's important that we actually note the statistics that we have on this incidence. 1 in 12 women in Nova Scotia report that they have been victims of violence at the hands of a current or former partner or spouse. We know that that's underreported because 88% of sexual assaults do not get reported, and we know that 2/3 of spousal violence is also not reported. Another very startling part of the picture is that 1/3 of the incidents of domestic violence are witnessed by children. And we know that that has a long-term, very negative and harmful impact on their lives. As well, Mr. Speaker, we know that domestic violence crosses all nations, all socioeconomic groups. There is no community or neighborhood in Nova Scotia that is not affected by domestic violence. And as MLAs here in the House, I hope that none of us are so naive as to think that perhaps our communities might not be places where the domestic violence exists, because we know that it is in every neighborhood, that it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, and it may be exacerbated by poverty, but it is not by any means defined by that. Domestic violence takes many forms, Mr. Speaker. It can be physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, or economic and financial. All the forms are debilitating. They rob women of their independence and their self-esteem, and they scar families and the children that are affected. And one of the worst parts of it in all, Mr. Speaker, is the recurring cycle of violence that we know occurs as a result of being a witness or growing up in a family where domestic violence exists. The children who had originally come to transition houses with their mothers are now returning as either the women who are being abused or the batterers themselves. And we know that it's because of the imprint that makes on very young children. There is some good work being done in the province, and I think it's important to note that as we go about through this bill looking for best practices and strategies that can improve the situation in Nova Scotia, we do have some wonderful people working on the front lines in Nova Scotia in transition houses, women's centres, and second stage housing. And among those, one of the programs that I think bears mention today is the program called Healing the Bruises, which is a program that Alice Housing had piloted last year or in recent years. And it has actually just received corporate support from Emira to continue for the next 3 years. And it has shown some tremendous help to young children who have again themselves been the victim of domestic violence or having seen domestic violence in their homes. And that's the kind of program that we need to have support for. We need to understand what strategies are going to work. We need to study other places where they have had success in reducing the incidence of domestic violence. And that is the aim of this bill, to see that we work collaboratively to find solutions that are before us. Mr. Speaker, the idea of the bill is to create a committee. I mentioned the word collaborative. It should be collaborative, and it should involve representatives from multi-departments of government, the status of women, justice, community services, education, health, all the departments, and there may be others. The status of women, I think, is mentioned as well in the bill. But we want to engage all of the departments that have a role to play in reducing the incidence of domestic violence, and at the same time engage the community organizations that are working frontline with people to try and make a difference. And that, again, is the women's centers, transition houses. And we can't forget as well the programs for men's intervention, the programs that deal with anger management and try to help the perpetrators of violence as well. So I believe that this format or structure will be the best way to move forward in finding the answers that our province really desperately needs. So using that, we believe we certainly believe that working together is the best way to find the answers and to get the maximum effectiveness from this approach. Again, as I say, there are a lot of other provinces and states that have tried different ways of addressing domestic violence, and we have not put our efforts towards identifying those best practices and trying to integrate them here into our own province. And I believe that there are some tremendous ideas, whether it's domestic violence courts or, I can't even imagine some of the things that would work better. I know that the answers have to be either judicial, they can be legislative, they can be social action programs, but we need to work together to find them. The transition houses, women's centers, and second stage housing, to name just a few, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The chatter is getting a little high. The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, to date it's been transition houses, women's centres and second stage housing that has dealt firsthand with the women that are suffering domestic violence, and they have created an essential safety net. But Mr. Speaker, they have been poorly funded, and they operate under some really difficult challenges. They try to provide services that really government is responsible for, and they have not got the benefits and the wages that can help them to maintain their staffing and to maintain the extent of services that they know are desperately needed. Certainly with many of these organizations, they would like to be doing more outreach, more extension of their services into the communities, and they don't have the resources to do that. So I would hope that we can identify which parts of the province and where women are most vulnerable and how we can get services that will serve them. Because I know that particularly in our rural and smaller communities, it may be a long distance to get to a transition house or to get the services that are needed. And there has to be a way, Mr. Speaker, of providing that safety net for all women across the province. For all of us, it's a frustration that the reach can't be as broad as it should be, and it's appropriate that while we're here in the House and this is budget time, that we'd be considering how we can use our scarce resources to the best advantage to support the community organizations that are doing such terrific work. Without them, honestly, we would be in much worse state than we are today, but they need our help. Mr. Speaker, again, since 1990, I think the members of the House would be surprised and I would hope shocked to know that 70 women have lost their lives in this province due to domestic or sexual violence. 70 women, Mr. Speaker, since 1990. And the stories themselves show just how pervasive and how the incidence of domestic violence crosses all cultures and the entire province. The women that have lost their lives, Mr. Speaker, have come from economically stable homes, and others have lived on the edge of poverty. There have been many young women, and young women are more vulnerable, but they have also included women in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s. The statistics show that they come from the English communities, from our Acadian communities, from the First Nations, and some have been new immigrants to Nova Scotia. Others have lived here their whole lives. They've been both working women and stay-at-home moms. Some were only dating the men that killed them, and others have been married for decades. Mr. Speaker, I think that gives an idea of how widespread the incident of domestic violence is. Mr. Speaker, this bill will give us an integrated approach. It will take us from talk, I hope, to some solid action and strategies. It will seek the best solutions for prevention, education, victim support, treatment and help for abusers, and judicial and legislative responses that we can come to. In many ways, this bill replaces the Framework for Action Against Family Violence that was better known as the Family Violence Prevention Initiative, which we all know was cancelled by the government in 2001. I'm very pleased that today, Bill number 81 is here for second reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend my colleague from Halifax, Clayton Park, for bringing this important issue to the floor of the legislature. And it's unfortunate that we have to discuss this issue. I know that people in this province have been working very hard on this issue for over 30 years, and I'm sure at times they feel quite discouraged because we do not seem to be making much progress. And I want to say that Bill 81 has some strengths. It highlights an important issue. It focuses on collaboration between community, especially community groups, and government. And it also provides for an annual review of the issue to see what progress has been made. But I'd like to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that the time now is actually for action. We need more action, not more study. And I just want to tell you a story. For over 27 years, Manitoba had the highest average domestic homicide rate in Canada. And through progressive public policy and financing and political will, it now has the lowest average rate of female domestic homicide. So just for example, last year, 2007, Manitoba provided interventions for children who are exposed to domestic violence, and we've heard that often in a third of the cases, children are present when it happens. And so in Manitoba, they actually are treating the trauma of the children and breaking the cycle of violence. Also in Manitoba last year, they provided more money, considerably more money, for women's shelters and women's resource centers, or women's centers, as we would call them here in Nova Scotia. In Manitoba last year, they stabilized the service delivery by 33 community-based agencies. They increased wages and benefits of the staff. They increased the operating budgets. They increased the per diem rates, and this made a significant difference in the delivery of service. Also last year in Manitoba, they provided security upgrades to women's shelters. They introduced a public awareness campaign, and they provided board training so that the volunteers who serve on the boards of these organizations were able to give better oversight of the services in terms of planning and accountability. So Manitoba gave us a model, Mr. Speaker, showing a coordinated approach to this issue using a network of 33 community-based agencies and also using a provincial association of domestic violence workers. It's previously been mentioned that in this province, we had the Family Violence Prevention Initiative, very similar to what's being proposed in Bill 81. And it was disbanded in 2001. So we've been down the committee road before, and it does have limited uses. It did establish an effective and consistent response by government departments. It actually allowed some coordination across various departments, and it also involved considerable community agencies. And in Nova Scotia, we had already, before 2001, prepared and implemented annual work plans. We had included Aboriginal, African Nova Scotian, immigrant and senior representatives on the committee. We had developed protocols for a coordinated response to child, spousal, and elder abuse, and we had developed a training strategy, a very good foundation. But perhaps its most important legacy was the implementation of 16 interagency committees around the province. Now, I have no idea how many of these interagency committees are still operating, but certainly in 2001, there were 16. So I do want to speak briefly about what I consider some of the weaknesses in Bill 81. It's a step in the right direction, as I said earlier, but it's not moving quickly enough. And I would suggest that the main weakness is listing groups that actually excludes key movers and shakers in this area. Major players are being left out in this bill. For example, the regional interagency committees. They have considerable experience and community know-how. Also, the Elizabeth Fry societies. These societies in Nova Scotia, and we have a very active one in mainland Nova Scotia that I'm pleased to say has its administrative headquarters now in my constituency, in Holly House. The Elizabeth Fry Societies of Nova Scotia respond to the needs of women in conflict with the law. And they've also had a renewed focus on developing community programs and services that help women who are in danger of coming in conflict with the law. And so it actually administers to or ministers to a broader segment of women in the community. The Silent Witness Nova Scotia program would not be included in such a committee. This group started in 2004 to give voice to women who have been silenced by domestic violence. And the key leadership in Silent Witness Nova Scotia comes from female officers within the police, probation, and victim services fields. This committee does not include community-run health centers who have a lot of first-hand experience with domestic violence in this province. They don't include representatives from legal aid. And it doesn't include equity-seeking groups. It doesn't ensure representatives from the Aboriginal, African Nova Scotian, immigrant, senior, and disability sectors. And these women are particularly vulnerable in terms of domestic violence. The other weakness I would suggest in the bill is the fact that there's an imbalance between the government representatives and the community representatives. And it allows for the government to appoint a chair. And I would suggest that there might be better balance if there were two co-chairs, one representing the community agencies and perhaps one appointed by government. It also calls for specific statistics and indicators around the whole issue of domestic violence. And I would suggest that before something that specific is listed in legislation, that there should be consultation with community-based agencies and organizations to make sure that the most relevant information is being analyzed and researched. It actually, in reading the bill, some of the indicators that are asked for in the annual review might suggest that there are deficiencies among the community agencies doing the work, when I don't think that was the intent of the bill, so I just think that could be better phrased. And the bill should also include in the review a look at appropriate funding rates and mechanisms in this province. It may be that the Department of Community Services is not the most appropriate home department for this. Perhaps it should come under Department of Justice. So I think the mandate of the committee should be broadened to look at some of those issues as well. I want to reaffirm the seriousness of this issue. My colleague from Halifax Clayton Park has talked a little bit about the incidence of domestic violence in this province. It's interesting that since 1990, and this is a serious matter, since 1990, over 80 Nova Scotian women have lost their lives due to domestic violence in this province. And that, Mr. Speaker, is unacceptable. Women are particularly vulnerable at the 3, 6, and 12-month period after leaving their partner. 30% of the women killed in Nova Scotia are killed after they end the relationship. And almost 94% are killed either in or near their homes or cottages. So that dispels some of the myths that women are not trying to move on with their lives. It's not safe for them after they leave their partner, and we have to look at the security issues, and we have to make sure that geographically we have the community-based programs and services so that women all over this province, once they make that decision, they have a safe haven to go to, and that they have the appropriate supports in place in the community to help them and their children. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to re-emphasize that this is an incredibly serious issue in Nova Scotia. We lost ground when the Family Violence Prevention Initiative was cut by the Conservative government in 2001. And there's lots, we've lost that ground, but there's lots of experience and best practices happening in other provinces in Canada that would allow us to fast track upgrading our previous strategy and plan. So we need to fast track that action, not continue to dwell in the study mode. So I would encourage that if we're going to move forward with this committee, that it be given the resources it needs in order to move into the action stage as quickly as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable, the Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And at this point, I want to rise and speak to this bill, and indeed I want to echo a lot of the concerns, and I do recognize the seriousness, indeed the severity of issues that are affected as a result of domestic violence and its impact. I know in my own, we all know in our own communities, but also deal with families that and individuals that are impacted by domestic violence, and I welcome the legislation in principle. I would just note that as we go forward, there are some amendments from a government perspective we'd like to have dialogue on, but indeed want to see this move forward, so we can do that at the law amendments process and when we come back for further debate in the House. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I recognize the honourable member, it will be to close debate. The Honourable the Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make an introduction if I could.
Please do.
Do we have a moment? Yeah, I'd like to draw the attention of the House to the West Gallery, where we have two guests with us tonight. Joanne Bernard, who is in the gallery, is the Executive Director of Alice Housing and a representative of Silent Witness Nova Scotia, and she and Annette Hill are here to listen to tonight's debate on domestic violence. So I wonder if you'd just stand and receive the welcome of the House. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to thank the other members for their comments, and I do look forward to law amendments where I believe there will be a number of amendments made to the bill. I think that would be appropriate. We've seen in the poverty reduction strategy that naming the different groups had the possibility of leaving out some very important representatives, so I think that needs to be addressed. Perhaps there'll be other points as well, so I look forward to the bill moving to law amendments, and with that, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of Bill number 81.
The question is for Bill number 81 to pass. All those in favor ready for second reading of Bill number 81? Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried.
Bill 81, entitled An Act Respecting the Establishment of a Domestic Violence Prevention Committee in Nova Scotia.
Order that this bill be forwarded to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 121, the Assessment Act?
Bill 121, the Assessment Act. The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too am glad to rise in my place tonight, and I'll not be long. And this bill was a bill that was brought back in. This is an amendment to the bill that we passed in 2006, dealing with the Assessment Act and caps on assessment. At that time, I guess in our haste in the legislature, we didn't put an amendment in, or we didn't include cooperative housing. All this bill does is includes cooperative housing in this bill, and I must say that if it was not for my colleague from Halifax Needham, brought this to my attention by High Hopes, the cooperative in Halifax, and led by Susan Kenny. So again, I thank my colleague from Halifax Needham for bringing this to my attention as the housing critic, and thank you.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I certainly think that this is an important amendment to the Act. Bill number 121 will improve it by including cooperative housing in the cap, which I think is very important. And we look forward to this moving to law amendments as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I wish I could be as brief as my other two colleagues. However, Mr. Speaker, the CAP legislation was put in place to protect Nova Scotia residents from sudden and dramatic increase in property assessments due to the strong housing market. This has been in place for a little while now, and over the course of time we've seen some areas where improvements can be made in this legislation. This is one of these areas which we approve in principle, and with those few comments, unless somebody wants me to go longer, good job. I'll sit down now.
If I recognize the Honourable Member, it will be to close debate. The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton Nova.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I like to move Bill 122 be moved forward to law amendments. Second.
Well, I think you mean 121.
Bill 121, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is for second reading on Bill 121. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Bill 121, title An Act to amend Chapter 23 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Assessment Act.
Order that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call public bills for second reading?
Public bills for second reading.
Bill number 146, the Motor Vehicle Act.
Bill 146, the Motor Vehicle Act. The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to move second reading of Bill number 146. Mr. Speaker, there are several amendments to the Motor Vehicle Act here. As the House will know, Mr. Speaker, we've initiated several efforts in regards to impaired driving in this province over the last number of years. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we launched a pilot project in southwest Nova Scotia as a new tool for police to address impaired driving in this province. Mr. Speaker, this integrated impaired driving enforcement unit is a joint effort of the local police and RCMP and government departments. It was launched, Mr. Speaker, this past December, and to this point, has stopped more than 21,000 vehicles at 114 vehicle checkpoints. The officers have issued 193 roadside alcohol screening tests, laid 38 impaired driving charges, and ordered 45 immediate 24-hour suspensions. Mr. Speaker, although this is a pilot, the charges clearly show we have a lot more work to do in this province, and we must continue our efforts in regards to impaired driving and fighting that in this province, Mr. Speaker. To that end, Mr. Speaker, we're now in the process of finally developing the Ignition Interlock program for Nova Scotia. It's a created and made in Nova Scotia program that reinforces the need for both enforcement, especially, Mr. Speaker, for treatment to achieve long-term changes in behavior in regards to impaired driving in Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, at this point, 8 provinces have initiated Ignition Interlock and across the country. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that, in fact, this has attracted national attention here in Nova Scotia. The Traffic Research Inquiry Foundation, Injury Foundation, have invited the Deputy Registrar in this province to present at their International Ignition Interlock Symposium. Mr. Speaker, our pilot project in southwest Nova Scotia is effectively targeting other motor vehicle infractions. In addition to impaired driving, officers have charged 147 motorists for speeding and another 66 for failing to wear seatbelts. Mr. Speaker, a suspended driver with a license is a very serious penalty in this province. It's put in place when someone's driving behavior puts others on the highway at risk. To that end, we're introducing amendments to double the fines for driving while suspended in this province. The fines, including court costs, will now range from $1,257 for the first offence up to $5,857 for the third and subsequent offences. Mr. Speaker, we're also introducing amendments regarding vehicle impoundment, another essential road safety tool for law enforcement. Impoundment allows police to take drivers and their vehicles off the road when they shouldn't be there. These amendments will clarify and streamline the existing impoundment legislation to improve this process. It will allow better coordination between police and the registry of motor vehicles to ensure that impoundment is a useful tool that helps police keep people off the road who shouldn't be there, and as well, Mr. Speaker, in many cases, dispose of these vehicles in a clear process. Mr. Speaker, these amendments work together to ensure our roads become safe and to crack down on the behavior that puts Nova Scotians at risk. Finally, Mr. Speaker, these amendments will allow for the registration of motorcycles with two wheels on the front steering axle, providing they meet motor vehicle safety standards set by Transport Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, with these few comments, I move second reading of Bill number 46.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax Atlantic got a quick introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased to introduce to the House a young man from Spryfield, a young man with great visions, and his name is Jeremy Martel, and he has a great deal of interest in the democratic process in this chamber and outside. So would you please welcome Mr. Martel.
The Honourable the Member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and speak to Bill number 146 and an act to amend Chapter 293 of the Motor Vehicle Act. And I thank the Minister for bringing this bill forward. It's a bill that I certainly feel that we can be supporting. Some items of the bill are clearly housekeeping items, while others are clarification and or new provisions to be added to the Act, such as the clarity around the Ignition Interlock pilot, the provision giving law enforcement more clarification and the ability to seize, impound, and dispose of vehicles may allow for a more efficient process and will enable law enforcement to seize or impound vehicles that could be used in criminal activity and vehicles driven by delinquent drivers. There are some cautions, however. We would want the Minister to ensure that the bill does not allow for indiscriminate seizures of vehicles whose owners perhaps have accumulated a small number of parking tickets, or the safety inspection for a newer vehicle that perhaps has run out by a few days. If the bill's intent is to deal effectively with habitual delinquent drivers who drive while suspended or with no insurance, or who are impaired, or are using the vehicle for criminal activity, then this is a good bill. Another feature of the bill we can support are the provisions for the registry and law enforcement to deal effectively with impounded vehicles, possible transfer of ownership to impound facility operators of impounded vehicles with little value and whose owners have not claimed them nor have taken responsibility for paying the storage fees. This will allow for more effective and cost-effective disposal. Another aspect of the bill that we do support are deterrence and penalties for driving while suspended or while one's privilege to obtain a license has been cancelled. We are concerned, however, that the doubling of fines may result in other difficulties. The collection, they're telling me to hurry or slow down.
Hurry.
We are concerned, however, that the doubling of fines may result in other difficulties.
I would have to ask the member if she would adjourn debate so we can call the business for tomorrow.
I adjourn debate.
Yes. Thank you. The Honourable, is everyone in favor of that question? All in favor? Aye. The Honourable, the Liberal Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The House will sit tomorrow from the hours on 12 noon until 4 p.m. for Opposition Day business. Following the daily routine and question period, we'll be calling resolution number 2082, and we'll also be calling Bill 119. I would now like to turn it back to the Government House Leader.
The Honourable, the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.